So good morning, everybody. And I know that was live when I said that, and everybody's like, what's the reference on that? Data Day Wednesday, one of the favorite days on the week, of the week, in the week, of the week. Anyways, we're here, Data Day, keeping you ahead of the change curves, and we're going to drop some serious bombs today.
Ooh.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
So it looks like we're streaming.
I think we're working
we had
today.
such an issue yesterday. It was
Thank
crazy.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Lisa by 2 seconds.
Yeah, we've got like with.
Oh, it was fast too. That was fast. That was fast.
Lisa by 2 seconds. Wow.
Yeah. Champion again too. I think Jeff's sleeping in or something. I don't know what's going on.
Jeff gave up. Jeff's like Lisa's waiting to hit morning or something. Morning, y'all.
Morning, everybody. Hope that today's streaming we didn't do an event today specifically because all the research and the customer service that I spoke to yesterday at Restreaming, they're like, well, no, everything's working perfect because everybody's kind of pointing the fingers at the next person. Must be LinkedIn's feed. So I decided today that we would just kind of go off the regular feed as opposed to the event feed. So hopefully y'all catch us, y'all will see us and watch one of the best days in logistics and transportation, Data Day Wednesday, with our main man, Dean Croke. Dean, how are you?
Put you on the spot, Dean. Are you ready for that?
No pressure at all. No pressure at all.
There shouldn't be any pressure by now, brother. We've delivered consistently for the past almost 6.5 months. True. Serious data that's been way ahead of any other publishing platform.
Yeah, I've had more pressure trying to back three trailers onto a dock with like a crowd of auctioneers watching in Australia.
And I gotta say, brother, I love the shirt. My other car is a Peterbilt. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that is classic.
That was great.
That is awesome.
Dean's representing with the shirts. I love it.
Yes, sir.
I had that blood transfusion when I was a little boy. And I ended up with a lot of diesel in my veins, clearly. So it's been a lifestyle thing for me. I can't. It's funny. People put memes out on social media of people that are sort of working at home and they hear an engine brake go off and they drop everything and run out on the road. Well, I'm kind of like that. Like I heard a big Peterbilt coming up the road from about a mile away yesterday. Head straight through 8-inch pipe. So I knew exactly what it was. As I'm working here at my desk, and I was on a call, and I said, "Can you just hold on a second?" So I raced outside.
Then you went and checked it out?
I got a really good video from my Instagram feed. So it was a big.
Oh, good. Is that the one? Because I saw one also with a gravel truck or one of the gravel trucks that you posted as well.
No, I haven't posted this one yet. It's I got to do a bit of editing on it, but you'll see it. Anyway, trucking's fascinating industry for me. I love it. But we've got some crazy things going on at the moment in the world of data. We talked about on our
transition, Dean.
Yeah,
look at that. It's as if you were planning that transition.
You didn't catch yesterday's show. He's a pro.
Segue. I had to look up what Segway was when I moved to this country. By the way, I had to Google it. Anyway, someone said nice Segway, and I said, what? Anyway, because American English is very different to Australian English.
Yeah, and when you say Segway, I think of Paul Blart Mall Cop where he's booting around. Yeah, I'm thinking like, really? Are you going to get up and ride one of those? Imagine doing a show from one of those.
That's what I think.
You guys see that post on LinkedIn where the guy's on his bike with the green screen and he's like, he's doing his all on his bike. Anyways, so Dean, what's happening in the world of supply chain?
Yes, what is this crazy stuff going on with data?
The big story this week is, and it kind of feeds into our lane of the day, but we've got something extraordinary happening in the spot market. So contract rates, right? So remember the analogy, and I know I talked to Lisa and her husband about this in San Diego, but think about contract rates as the weather. The climate, spot rates as the weather. Right? Mm-hmm. So the spot rates are the weather today, today's rate, whereas the climate is the long-term contract rate. So it's the climate. It doesn't change a lot, right? But it does change. But it takes a long time for it to become noticeable. So contract rates, which represent about probably 85 to 90% of loads moved today, are peaking and trending down. So that's important because we talked about reaching the peak of the cycle. Last week, for the first time, we saw what we call new replacement rates. So these are new rates coming into routing guides based on bids in February, March. Shippers put out their lanes to bid, or with their brokers and their carriers, and you bid on it. You put your rate in, goes into a routing guide. So those rates coming into the routing guides that the TMS system sends out through the tender system, the EDI system, they are starting to decrease. That's significant because they've been increasing for the best part of probably 6 quarters, as far as we know, and double-digit rate increases also. So they're cresting and coming down. Now, remember, spot rates are a really good indicator of where contract rates go on about a 4 to 6 month lag. So spot rates have already come down a lot.
Spot rates hit it 4 to 6 months later. Contract rates hit it.
Contract starts to get dragged down. Right? There's this pull effect, and it's the same on the way up. Although there's the rate of it, sort of the acceleration rate is a little bit different up and down. Rates tend to be slower to come down. So this year, if I can just quickly pull up my data that says how much weekly rates have dropped. So we're down. Spot rates have dropped about 28%. Or 77 cents a mile this year, and then so that's that drag effect, right? And then you can see it's starting to pull spot rates down. Contract rates down, not by much though. We're down 28% in spot, but only minus 1% in contract. So you can see there's that pull effect that's taking time. That's important to remember because if shippers are going to start going out to the market to rebid all of their heavy lanes. They're going to have their bids open longer to get more carriers in to get the price down. So they're going to rebid a lot of those bids that were done last year. Remember last year they did a lot of mini bids to try and get capacity on their high volume lanes. So they're going to definitely do, I think, more mini bids. If I was a shipper, that's probably what I would do, given that capacity is pretty loose. But the more important point is that spot rates normally plateau around April, May, and then go up towards July 4. So normally between, and I had a look at this today. So the first 2 weeks of June are generally pretty important. Spot rates normally go up in the first 2 weeks of June, and they keep going all the way to July 4. And that is normally a 20 to 30% lift in dry van and reefer rates. And then on July 4, they just fall right away. When summer holidays start, everything gets quiet. So in the first 2 weeks of June, dry van rates normally go up 8 cents a mile. So in the last 2 weeks, they'd normally go up 8 cents. They were down 4. In reefer, good point, Joe. But in reefer, they normally go up 7 because it's produce season. They normally go up 7 cents in the last 2 weeks. They went down 10. And in flatbed, they normally go up 5 in the last 2 weeks. They went down 2. So at a time when spot rates came down, plateaued for 3 weeks, we had road check and then Labor Day, and then a couple of short weeks in between, spot rates plateaued, and then they went down again, which is unseasonal. So you would say, well, compared to last year, wow, that's a big drop. Well, remember, last year is a real outlier in many respects, so I wouldn't be comparing anything to those rates. Now, the other point to keep in mind is, so rates are still going down. We forecast rates to get to something like about $1.80. There's in dry van at line haul, they're sitting at about $2 a mile today.
So you expect overall them to drop 20 cents a mile overall across?
They could go. Our worst case forecast has got them down to about $1.80 a mile before they'll start to pick back up again. So what we're looking for is the bottom. Like when do they bottom out? And what I would caution everybody is that to remember this, that even though rates are down around $2 a mile line haul, or about $2.74 including the 74 cents fuel surcharge, they're still 33 cents a mile higher than the average for all of the pre-pandemic years. So if I run that rate through my owner-operator model, I'm still okay. I'm not making the profit margin I was last year, but I'm still making money. I'm still paying myself a wage. I'm still paying my bills. I'm paying my fuel bill, although it's really bad in terms of cost. I'm still surviving. And that's important to remember. So operating costs have gone up, even though spot rates are coming down. So we're not in that sky is falling doom and gloom situation right now. Jason Miller did a great piece yesterday. If you guys don't, well, I know you two do, but if yes, their listeners, you need to follow Professor Jason Miller on LinkedIn. He did a piece yesterday on the the rate of the change of transportation revenue, and it showed how much money carriers had made in the last year. And the chart, if you go to LinkedIn and have a look at the chart, you'll find it's I think it was up 46%. Sorry, no, I'll have to look at the numbers. It was up something like the number 46 sticks in my mind. Anyway, the point was that the trucking companies in general had a unbelievable year financially, and I think that's what a lot of people are missing in this discussion is how well carriers did last year. I know we've laboured this point, so the story this week is that rates are still going down at a time when they'd normally go up. Shippers are still seeing capacity loosen. They're seeing their contract rates in routing guides and new rates coming into routing guides, and rates already in routing guides peak and start to come down. So that means we're at the peak of the cycle. And of course, DJ, you'll know what that cycle means. Eventually, right, we go down and then we'll come back up again.
Yep. That's right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And speaking of, man, so shout out to Kenneth. Kenneth had a post this morning, just 16 minutes ago. He is definitely, Kenneth, if you're watching, or I see Antoine out there, Kenneth is on it. He literally, so it said he just posted this 16 minutes ago. In the last 2 weeks, dry van spot rates have dropped 4 cents a mile. Reefer is down 10 cents when it's typically increased by 7 cents. And then he just goes on to, and he shared some DAT screenshots. So thanks for sharing the DAT stuff as well. But yeah,
sounds very familiar.
It is. I'm actually on Jason Miller's page.
His charts are of labor. Maggie loves his charts, by the way. So shout out Jason.
You know, he mightn't have published it yet. So he might not have published it. Maybe I was reading it somewhere else. He probably will publish it. Let me quickly pull this up. Census data on trucking. So it's the quarterly service. He'll probably push this out today. It's the quarterly services survey data of revenue for truck transportation establishments for Q1 22. In the first quarter of this year compared to the last quarter of last year, truck transportation revenue grew 6.2%, and it's up nearly 20% year over year. And it's up 41% over the Q1 of 2019 before the pandemic.
It's up how much over 2019?
41%. So
see that, and 2019 was kind of bottomed out rates after 2018, right?
Right.
I mean,
2019, the market was starting to loosen, right? Was loosening after the 18th pike.
There was so much capacity in the market. Like I remember Toronto, Montreal, that would typically be 1,200, 1,000, 1,150, 1,100. At one point I had a friend of mine in Montreal owns a trucking company. He was like, "Dude, I'm being offered $350." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? $350?"
Crazy stuff. Yeah.
$350 I'm being offered. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was bad. He actually parked almost a third of his fleet and brokered that freight out and made more money than his trucks rolling. Because he said, you know what, Dan, like I'm not burning the fuel. There's no maintenance. He goes, sure, there's still depreciation. And, I still have my truck and trailer payments. He goes, but I'll use my city fleet. I'll go pick everything up, bring it to my dock, cross dock it, give it to somebody and let them run for $1.20 a mile as opposed to me. Because I'm not losing anything. I can make the money on my brokerage and pay my trucks. Not a problem. And it actually was a fairly decent idea and, weathethered the storm, if you will, because 2019 was that year when there were companies dropping left, right, and center.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Can I just finish one point? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go for it.
So I just want to underline this point. So check out Jason Miller's post on how good the truck industry's done. Anecdotally, we hear carriers talking about, I'll just ride this out and park the truck and take it easy and all that. But quantifying it is very interesting when you look at some of the results. So the quarterly service is good. But Derek Leathers in their Werner Enterprises earnings call recently, they're a large truckload carrier. I think their fleet's up around 6,000 trucks. But he said this was our 7th consecutive quarter of record quarterly adjusted earnings per share. Werner's truckload revenues for the quarter were $764 million, up 148, or up 24%. Revenues are up 24%. Now, of course, costs are up. I get all that, but trucking companies, the revenues trucking companies have been generating have been substantial in the last year. So, I think carriers are in a pretty good position. Yes, they still can't get trucks out of factories. Yes, drivers are hard to find, hard to keep. Probably harder to keep than find. So, there's all sorts of things going on. I think there's going to be very tight capacity in the large truckload sector still. And then I think you're going to find a much looser market for the smaller fleets as we head into this market cycle. So that was kind of my 15-minute opening preamble.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
No,
I do. Jeff did make a statement here, and then he has something else. But this statement's very interesting, and I'd like to, I'd like to talk about it for a moment because, so Jeff says smart shippers move from contracts to the spot market, and my question becomes, because I've never been a shipper, but I know Jeff has.
Right.
Is that really smart? Because if you're under contract and you move to the spot rate, do you not piss off the contract carriers, Jeff? Or when you say that, do you mean more along the lines of like you have to pay attention to what's happening in the spot market in order to either renegotiate or and be fair on both levels? Like when rates are high, if you're in contract, pay the rates, the going rate. It's a question I've always kind of wondered, and we ask typically every single traffic manager we have on the show, or every single logistics guy, because in general, taking it for face value, those words, I would argue that and say, no, that's not smart. That if I was a carrier, and I know because when we were a carrier, when we had contracted freight and like dedicated, and we would run even if it was say picking up in Tennessee or Texas, and we would run 200 miles sometimes to honor those contracts and honor those dedications. Yeah. If that customer would go to the spot market when things changed, I'd actually be pretty upset. And I don't know if that, and I know you, Jeff, so I don't think you actually meant that. But.
Yeah, I'll say I think Jeff meant, and it's just true. I mean, the smart guys like Greg, like John, like, the shipper is I think what he means is they're just very informed, so they know when rates aren't right or when it doesn't.
I figured as much.
Whatever's going on. That's what I think he means. But still, again, the right way to do it would be to go back to your supplier first and negotiate the rates. Say, hey, like, this is what the rates are. But yeah.
So think about what happened in the last year. Like during a tight market, shippers tend to shift their procurement portfolio to increase their dedicated and private fleet use, which we saw a lot last year. They adjust the ratio of volume to asset rather than non-asset, right? So move more to carriers to lock in that capacity. And I think the challenge is that shippers tend to look for procurement based on the market they're in, not on the market they're heading into. So I think one of the things that we're seeing and hearing from our shippers is they're looking to have a more balanced approach to this. So maybe they'll decrease the amount of dedicated and private fleet use, and probably do what I'm seeing is that's increase more. To Jeff's point, they will increase the use of more non-asset based providers to take advantage of today's weather, today's spot rates, to move that volume. But what they're doing now, I think this is interesting. We heard it on our shipper call this week. They will probably do that on some of their lower volume lanes, but on their high volume lanes, I think they're going to keep the incumbents in place, right, and work with them very closely. Whereas some of that other volume, you have a lot of lanes that just never produce any revenue that you might bid on, or maybe one load a week. What shippers are telling us, because it's enormously costly to go out to a bid and put all of your lanes on a spreadsheet, and some of those lanes are not going to produce much volume to get a carrier excited. So what they're doing is they're doing smaller, mini bids with smaller carve-outs of their portfolio to lock in that capacity. And in the end, that ends up in a lower procurement cost, because even though you're letting some of it fall through the routing guide out into the spot market, the volume is just not there to cost you, substantially. So that's what I think carriers are going to do this year. But remember, shippers have memories of elephants and carriers have memories of goldfish. So,
I was just telling my wife this yesterday.
It's a study. It was an official study done by MIT, by Professor Kaplis and his team. They did a study on determining which category carriers and shippers fell into. So it's worth reading if you want to understand.
Yes, I'm actually going to read it because it's very interesting to talk about. Jeff says, as you recall, as I stated before, Dean, contract rates are unsustainable in the long run. As a result, shippers reevaluating their lanes and adjusting accordingly. If the rates went went up under contract, reps would come back and say their operating ratio has risen and they have to take an increase for sure. Yeah. Now, so with that being said, increases are faster than decreases. They always have been. I can remember from day one in the industry, they said you can never go up, but you can go down. So start high. And it's like, and then, so that's interesting. But
that's the tug of war battle.
Yeah, for sure. Right. For sure. So is there any specific markets that are being hit harder than other ones this week, Dean? And also, is there an update on Shanghai? I read speaking of Shanghai, I read a really interesting article. I actually sent it to you. Remember that article I sent you, Dean? Mm-hmm. Talking about, yes, Shanghai's open, but restrictions are still in place. There's still restrictions here, restrictions there. So this whole flood that we're expecting, they're saying it's not necessarily going to be in the, container getting atmosphere that we said it was.
Right.
Or we anticipate it to be, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the peak season will be much earlier this year if it's not already happening right now. Right. So last year we saw it start June, July. I think if I look at the volume on the Port of Los Angeles Port Optimizer, what they're saying is that for the last week of June, 26 to 02, week 26, the number of vessels delivering containers will be up 47% in that last week of June, only up 1% this week, down 38% next week, but up 47% the week after. So I think what you'll see is there'll be, I think, normally we see that surge come much later in the year, and I think what we're seeing is that surge is probably here. Inventory warehouses are full, inventory levels are very high. People are going to be trying to find space for this season's inventory. Shippers are already pulling forward back to school. We're already talking back to school now, and we haven't even got out of school because shippers are trying to get that volume in. So there's a lot of excess inventory being built up. I think for truckload carriers, it means that a lot of that freight's already been hauled. And, and I did see a lot of freight moving just between warehouses last year. I know it's a topic we talked about a lot, but just freight moving around trying to find a home because it missed the season. It missed fall season, it missed holiday season, and it's competing for space in warehouses that we hear everywhere are incredibly full. And not only that, shippers are telling us that they've got the wrong mix of inventory depending on the season. So I think we covered this last week, but, they've probably got too many pajamas and not enough dress slacks for people to go to work. Right? Yeah. So as a simple...
I'm finding, I don't know about you guys, but I'm finding around me, way more things on special now.
Right. That's
and so we were just we obviously, because of all the construction we're doing and all the things we're doing in the backyard, I'm starting to pay attention to what's where. And a lot of stores that would normally have things like umbrellas don't carry them anymore. They're only online. Right. And it's funny because Christine and I were talking about this last night where we were looking in a store and it was like, why don't they have an umbrella? It's usually they have a full setup with the umbrella and they don't. And I was like, interesting. And I'm wondering if it's because inventory levels are so high. They're like, you know what? Leave those as online exclusives. It's cheaper than, delivering an umbrella is cheaper than delivering a 800 pound, cabana or gazebo, with steel roof and all that kind of stuff. So keep that in the store because they can wheel it out and get it out of there. Less cost on shipping. And I'm starting to, again, where I am, I'm not sure about you guys, but if you start going into stores and looking at specific products that were there last year and the year before that aren't there, I start to speculate. Again, I can only speculate. Actually, I should call a couple of buddies of mine that own Canadian Tires and ask them, because you know what, I'll do that for next week and I'll have some data for you guys, because they only have specific amount of warehouse space. And what they do is, so 2 years ago, just before during the pandemic, working with a couple of Canadian Tire stores for inventory and what's going where, we pulled out in one of the warehouses I work with close to 8,000 square feet. And it was literally just everything and anything you can imagine a Canadian Tire selling, wrapped on pallets. And it was like, this stuff is not moving, so we're getting rid of it. And literally they would pay, for 8,000 square feet every month just to get rid of it.
Right.
And I remember
Right.
asking the guy, I said, well, why can't you just put it on special? So the problem is, like, with those stores, they're kind of obligated by corporate, even though they own it. They can't just arbitrarily say, okay, we're putting all this stuff on special because the other Canadian Tire store might not have, you know what I mean? And it's like, so it was, but it was interesting to see because he was, you know, when he was saying, he says, okay, so we move, my store specifically moves about 1,600 gazebos a month during July and August. Then it moves down to about 1,000 in September, and it goes down to about 200 to 150. He goes, so what we do is that October timeframe, that's when everything goes on special. So we'll move all the inventory out so we don't have to store it for the year. And it'll be interesting to see what's coming on special in the next couple of weeks, because like you said, Dean, after July 4, right? Like we have Canada Day and Independence Day. Everything drops off a cliff. Like if your prospects, if you're not in the middle of closing a deal, you're very unlikely to close the deal until September. Not saying it doesn't happen, but you're very unlikely because now people are in summer mode, right? And the shipping managers and everybody that you're dealing with that makes the decisions. Well, they're saying, do I really want to add somebody that can possibly cause me friction when I'm going on vacation in 2 weeks? And then they're on vacation for 2 weeks and then they're back and like, well, I'm back. So you're gonna have to give me a week and a half to settle in. There's your summer, right? There's literally, you know, of the July, August until September kicks in. There's your summer, right? And it was interesting because I always found it so frustrating when I was selling the summertime months, because I want to be out golfing, but I got to be making cold calls. But it's like, you can't get a hold of anybody. Nobody wants to make a decision. It's crazy. It was crazy, but I found it because, you know, they're just not interested in possible problems coming up, right? And this is another big reason why I often say, be 75% towards your goals by the time Q3 hits. Like, if you are not, you run the risk, especially in today's economy, because, you know, 5-6 years ago, there was a Christmas rush, and a lot of salespeople from every end that I've worked in, they counted on the Christmas rush as that like Christmas bonus. You know what I mean? And now it's just kind of this steady mix where there's no real peak at Christmas. Well, there hasn't been since, what was it, 2020, I think, Dean, that we've been, since we've been looking back. So it's interesting, and it's a big reason why 75% of your goal, because then if nothing happens over the next 3 months, so call it July, August, and September, you get back into the talks and things start closing in September. You're literally going into Q4 75% complete, which is now feasible to hit your goals, if that makes sense to everybody.
Bingo. Before we go to the comments, I want to go back to, and then I do want to go to Maggie's got a good comment, and Jeff has one too. But Shanghai, you mentioned about Shanghai. I had just seen, and I was trying to look up the report, but Dean, just for you as well, I seen a report that Biden is talking about possibly with, it was a company started with A, but pulling some of the restrictions, or I can't think of the word, tariffs from China to help open more gates to bring some. And so I seen a report on that just to kind of roll back to China.
It chassis trailers, like something to do with?
No, it was AXXOS or something like that. But something with that. If you look it up, but I forget where I seen that. But then Dan, we talked about Texas. I seen Greg Abbott had shared Texas is now home to more Fortune 500 companies than any other state.
I
And
think
so
Caterpillar's
that probably
getting there too.
has a lot to do. Remember, we were talking about Texas and the lanes out there. So.
And I'm sure there's strategy behind it. Right now, the port's open to bigger. They don't have to deal with LA ports anymore. I mean, I don't know, but also not to mention, as Dean stated many times, that whole centralized warehouse and distribution area in that Tennessee, Kentucky, all that area, Texas is closer. So now you got a port city as well as, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to sit down with somebody and figure out that long-term 5-10 year strategy and how they implement it today, because that'd be pretty cool.
You're going to see, I think you're going to see a lot of volume come in through Texas, right? So there's that nearshoring concept. So there's a couple of things. It's easier probably to get to a lot of parts of America by coming in through, you know, ports like Houston and Corpus Christi and Mobile and those ports around the Gulf Coast. You can get to most of the US population within a couple of days by truck. But I think what you're also going to see is a lot of imports come in through Mexico. I think it's Lazaro Carreños is the big deep sea port near, what's that famous area where Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis used to hang out in the 60s. What's that area? I used to go there on vacation.
I know what you're
showing
talking
my
about.
age and how bad my memory is, but so the point is that so if you think about geographically, if you didn't want to go to Los Angeles or Long Beach, you could come in through Mexico and connect to those two railroads that run straight up through the center of Mexico into the US and get freight moving that way. You could also move it to ports in South America and move it up through into the country that way. So I think you're going to see all sorts of different things go on this year, but the West Coast to East Coast shift in freight is still going on, albeit slowed down in May. Just remember that, as people talk about Shanghai, Dan, to go back to where we started this conversation, we still brought in 150,000 more containers in May than we did May last year, right? So, volumes are up about 6% year over year. Let me just double check my math here. Hang on. I'm off a little bit. 85,000. Sorry, 85,000.
That's still a huge amount of containers.
That's still
85,000 more. So even though people are talking about, Shanghai's been closed down, we're still bringing in record volumes of freight. In fact, ports like Charleston are still bringing in. They've had 15 months of record volume over in Charleston. So I think ports are doing pretty well. People always talk about the negative. Like how bad things are and how broken things are.
Well, negative travels much faster.
Yeah, but we're still doing an incredible job, right? You think about the ports; they're still processing record volumes of. We've still got glitches in the supply chain. Yeah, I get that, but we're still doing a really good job at moving much more volume year over year. So I think we'll definitely see more volume coming into the ports, but it won't be. I don't think it'll be anywhere near the level of volume we saw last November that crushed the West Coast ports and pushed the number of vessels waiting up to 109.
But do you think now people are spreading them out across?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The ports, like, as opposed to just everything was always LA from Asia, right? It was like, it's got to go to the West Coast, but it's like, so yeah, I could see that. But because of those bottlenecks, again, shippers being elephants, saying, okay, guys, hold on.
Yeah,
it might take an extra week to get there, but we're not stuck at anchor for 3.5, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. Then stuck in the rail yard for another week, then stuck, and then our 30 to 45 days moves up to 90 days. We can come around. So yes, we spend an extra week on the water, but we're out within 5 days. Yeah. Like I think this is happening a lot.
Oh yeah.
Well, the data we show, West Coast year over year volumes are up 1%, East Coast are up 9%. Huge. Right. So, but let me lay some numbers on you. Sorry, DJ, to cut you off there, but New York,
go ahead.
New York up 15% year over year. Savannah up 7, Houston up 24, Norfolk up 14, Charleston up 14, Miami up 13, Port Everglades up 10, Wilmington, Delaware up 17. So a lot of your East Coast ports where some of that volume has been redirected because of the West Coast congestion last year, they're all doing incredibly well this year. And remember, coming into the West Coast, you've got very low spot rates for truckload carriers now and plenty of capacity. Some of those rates that, out of Elizabeth to Atlanta, which is a massive warehouse market, the spot rates on that lane are just are really, really low for carriers right now. I think I could lay some numbers on you here that will blow you away. But Elizabeth, New Jersey, obviously it's the second largest port in the country, the largest on the East Coast. Truckload capacity has been flat for the last 4 weeks. Outbound rates are averaging $1.73 a mile, so that's excluding fuel, but trending down. But on Elizabeth to Atlanta, $1.52 average this week. That's 52 cents a mile lower than, let me check it, this time last year. So capacity is really loose. So you think about, if you're looking to talk to shippers, this is why shippers, to Jeff's point, this is why shippers would go to a non-asset provider to take advantage of better rates and rebid some of those contract lanes that they got stung by, this time last year. So capacity's loosened really, really quickly on the East and West Coast in the last 3 to 4 months.
Crazy. I'm trying to find
That is crazy.
An article I read that goes. We'll jump to Maggie's comment here, and then Jeff had one, and I'm trying to find the article that goes along with it. Love the chart Jason posted about Target. Their inventory turnaround time frame has almost doubled since the beginning of the pandemic. Right. And that's exactly what we talked about, is that turn that they're having. Jeff says, here's a good indicator. Prologis, the world's largest warehouse provider of over 964 million square feet. If they state they ran out of room like they did last year when they sent a note to their customers, we are in deep trouble. And there was just an article I read, and I believe it was Prologis, who just put in or just created a bid where, gosh, I mean, the warehouse space that they had was just insane. I'll have to find it and maybe send it to everybody after, and maybe we'll talk about it next week.
This is why dwell times are up on containers at ports, and chassis aren't being turned quick enough because they're staying loaded longer because warehouses are full. We've still got that ripple effect through our supply chain. Big carriers are talking about having bigger trailer pools. Well, so trailers are always been mobile warehouse capacity, albeit temporary, sometimes a bit longer than you'd like. So large fleets will go to bigger trailer pools. I think shippers will take advantage of those. They were doing it in the peak of the congestion last year. We were hearing carriers, they were doing a lot more drop and hook because they literally couldn't get trailers onto a dock because the warehouses were just overflowing and full during that.
Well, overflowing, half staffed because of all the restrictions and pandemic and people working from home and the government subsidies and all that. It's been a nightmare. It was Prologis. They entered in buying Duke Realty. Developer of logistics sites is buying Duke Realty in a $26 billion deal that will add 160 million square feet of space across 19 countries to their sprawling portfolio. So they've just walked into this deal. This was from yesterday. Wall Street Journal reported this yesterday. So crazy. They're actually buying the developer. So they have obviously first dibs on all the warehouse space. I mean, it's again, that strategy, right? Okay, we're seeing into the future. We're going to bet on the future in that. I think it's awesome. I love this.
I think to back to your point, Dean, about the doom and gloom, and really what John has said a few times that John Brewer, shout out to you, but what he's said a few times being on the show. I mean, right now we're just seeing the resilience and the way that we're, the true ones that are going to make the supply chain work and fix the problems that need to evolve, however they need to evolve, are making it happen. And that's just what's going on, and it's going to happen. I mean,
Hey, could I just ask Joshua, are you talking refrigerated or dry van? Because I'll pull up those rates in RateView now. You're saying you're running close to $110 north to North Florida. So I presume that's Philly to Jacksonville. So just shoot us a note in the message. Are you talking dry van or reefer?
Yeah, he said out of Philly. Part of this is more seasonal trends returning to the mark that we were seeing in the years prior to 2020. This time in 2019, we're running close to 110 a mile to North Florida. Yeah, and he said out of Philly.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Now, so we've been talking about this for a while, right? We're seeing a lot more return to normality. So let me pull up the data.
He says dry van.
If he's talking dry van excluding fuel, it was $234 this time a year ago. It's $141 today. So let me look at the opposite lane because I assume Joshua's going there to go back north. It's at $297 today. $297, $140, $397, $450 round trip for 1,600 miles. My math's not good enough to do that on the spot. I'd have to get a calculator out, but I assume that's you're doing a lower rate south to pick up something better coming back north.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's happening out of Texas with all the volumes peaking out of Texas. Yeah. People are going there for nothing. Right. To come back out, right? I mean, you see it everywhere. When produce season happens, you can get great deals specifically from the East Coast to the West Coast for team drivers. And, even if it's dry freight, they can load in a reefer because they're getting reefer rates coming home. It's all relative, right? The back and forth. I always remember as an asset-based carrier, you always looked at the triangle. Right? Because it's never A, B, B, C. It's A to B to C to pick up, then back to D, and then back to E, the yard. And it was always that triangle that we looked at. And we were able to say, okay, so we have this freight here. We take freight from XYZ broker here. We do this here. And so this is the rate. And all in, this is what we need to make it work, right?
So I just looked at the round trip revenue. Yeah, I just looked at the round trip revenue on that. If you went Philly at $1.48 and went back at if you came Philly to Jacksonville at $1.41 and then went back north on the same lane at $2.23. So you're running about $2.15, $2.20 a mile round trip. So not world-breaking record stuff, but certainly viable. So it's interesting. Joshua says Southeast is very tough right now, which is typical for this time of the year. Not that I need to tell you, but it kind of confirms what we've been seeing. Produce season's been incredibly quiet, and so that's going to push more reefer capacity back into the dry van market. They're running about 1,200 loads fewer per week out of the Southeast right now compared to last year. We're running about 20,000 loads a week fewer out of California. So again, these are year-over-year comps, which can be incredibly dangerous. And to Joshua's point, even though we've got nationally 30,000 fewer loads of fruit and veg moving, we had a lot more trucks came into the market last year. And we're just returning to normal pre-pandemic volumes is what it looks like in the market. So again, all your year-over-year comps are going to be pretty bad. This is very interesting conversation. I'm sorry to be distracted there, but Joshua is sort of telling us some things here that we've been talking about for a while, which is good to hear.
Yeah. No, it's
in the years past, Midwest and Northeast has always been very soft until late August, early September harvest. Yeah.
So Dan, you asked me a little while ago about what markets are kind of hot and cold. I think there's a couple of things. Obviously, produce season is very topical right now, and I think one of the challenging things for carriers has been the West Coast market because rates are way down. And I'll share with you some numbers. Normally, this time of the year, produce is absolutely pumping out of Fresno and sort of the Sacramento markets there, sort of near Stockton. So if you look at after being flat, spot rates have been pretty flat for a little while. In one of the lanes I've been watching has been Las Vegas. Remember we talked about last year, Los Angeles to Las Vegas? It was just insane. And I couldn't figure out. I almost got my truck out of retirement to go out there and just run back and forward because rates are at like $6.35 a mile. That's line haul excluding fuel, $6.35 a mile. They're up to a year ago they were $5.61. This week they're up to $5.51 a mile. So that's up 50 cents a mile on the average of the last 3 years. So even though rates are down nationally, there are some lanes where there is good opportunity for carriers and shippers are going to pay a lot more to move those loads. So you've got to be careful about just saying, oh, rates are down everywhere. They're not down everywhere because there's a capacity imbalance clearly on some of those lanes. But the broader picture on some of the major produce lanes, I look at Fresno to Hunts Point, New York, the big produce market there opposite LaGuardia. A lot of team carriers run back and forward across that. They'll do a round trip every week. Line haul rates drop to 206. So remember, produce volumes are down out of California at a time when reefer rates between Fresno and Hunts Point, New York would be going up. They're down to 206. It's $1.40 a mile lower compared to this time last year. That's extraordinarily low. Out of the cherry capital of the world in Lodi, California, same trend. They're at $2.30 a mile. It's $1 a mile lower than this time last year, albeit trending up a little bit. So for carriers looking to, that normally look to position their trucks on the West Coast to take advantage of produce season, it's just not materializing. And then, this is a bit of a segue, but I hope you heard the story. It was a hot story about the chili sauce manufacturer Sriracha shutting down sales over summer. So
no, I have not heard it, and I put Sriracha on everything.
Same here, got my attention. So it turns out that about 93% of chilies come from Mexico. Volumes are down 23% year over year. It's about 700 fewer truckloads. A lot of those chilies come in from Mexico through Nogales, Arizona. Reefer rates from Nogales to Los Angeles are 86 cents a mile lower than this time last year at $2.29. Wow. So yeah, they've a lot of.
Is it because the chilies can't be grown because of the weather?
Weather. It's climate.
Weather.
So,
Okay, so it's climate.
So
So
it
700
goes back to
truckloads of chilies. That's a lot of chilies.
fewer, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also in New Mexico along the river there. The name escapes me of the river, but there's a lot of chilies grown in New Mexico, and they've suffered from. They're still going back to labour shortages when the pandemic hit, and then climate changes have made a big impact on their crop yields. So there's a combination of things going on, but it's like one of those things like when we had baby formula the week before. This week it's sriracha hot chili sauce suspending sales. Like it's just one thing after the other, but it underpins the challenges that shippers have got that we all talk to as so I was going to say I'm not a sales professional talking to shippers, but I am talking to shippers every day about supply and demand. They're still seeing disruption everywhere. They're still not seeing labour back to the levels it should be at. They're having supply chain disruptions, even though they've got plenty of truckload capacity at their disposal today. They're still seeing a lot of problems on their production side. I think generally.
I think labor in general is very difficult. Very difficult. Like I'm starting to see, and I don't know about you guys, but really smart business idea is I'm starting to see more companies pop up. Like one I'm talking to right now called Helping Hands, where it's like, what project do you have going on? Okay, I'll give you 2 laborers, 1 carpenter, and here's my rate.
Right.
And it's like that's a pretty cool business idea. And they're popping up everywhere. They're popping up everywhere. It's crazy. I mean, just so the warehouse my brother-in-law's at, massive window manufacturer, he goes, you don't understand how bad we're hurting for people. He goes, it's crazy. And the thing is, the government stopped the subsidies, right? But it goes back to, Dean, what we talked about, gosh, almost a year ago, I think, where you said people retooled. Like the bar industries, the restaurant industries, they got hit hard because people retooled. Warehouses got hit hard because people retooled. I know we were at a 50th birthday party for a friend of ours and talked to a gentleman that I know who he was the head welder at a nuclear power plant. So you're talking serious welding abilities. This guy's got every ticket under the sun. And he'd been there for years. And when the second time the power plant shut down because of COVID, he said, I'm done. I'm going to find something else. And he says, he said, Dan, it was interesting. The first time they shut down, it was like I was able to get my kids' lunches ready. And if they had to stay home from school, I was able to hang out with them. And he goes, and like, it just changed my idea of going to an office. And now he bought a CNC table and he's building signs out of his garage and welding up and fabricating signs. And you think he's never been happier.
And probably loving it. I was just going to say, probably
loving it. Like, just DJ, the smile on his face when he was talking, I'm like, dude, you love this. He goes, it's Dan. He goes, I sit in, I get to, he does this because he's not a computer guy. He goes, I got to play on my computer. He creates AutoCAD files, hits enter, watches his machine cut these signs, and then he goes and he's still able to weld because he loves welding, but he's fabricating almost like sculptures and signs for people for their homes.
Right.
He goes, I have people ordering them from all over North America. Right. He goes, and all I did was put up a website. It was like, he's like, it's great. And he's happier. You know what I mean? Like that's huge.
Hey, Dan, can I just read you a paragraph from a Fortune magazine that I read here in April? Yeah. We talked about it. We said that on the show a while ago that the article talked about there being something like about 4.9 million men that aren't in the workforce, working age men 25 to 54. And I'll read it to you because it was very interesting. It said about 75% of today's non-employed prime age men are not in the labour force, about 3/4. That is so it's 3/4 of today's unemployed prime age men not actively looking for work. Some are in school, others taking care of kids. Most appear to be missing from the labour force for less benign reasons. Explanations fell into 3 baskets. First, there are fewer job opportunities for the less educated. And for the growing numbers of formerly incarcerated men, those still behind bars aren't counted in the statistics. Second, health problems, including the opioid epidemic, have taken a toll. Hadn't thought about that one. And finally, men may have less interest in work for proposed reasons ranging from, wait for this, changing marriage prospects to increased reliance on disability insurance and other government programs to the improved quality of video games.
Improved quality of video games? Did you just say?
Yeah, I did.
He sure
That's all.
did.
Yeah. So I don't want to go to work because I got to play Call of Duty all day.
Hey,
That's what,
hey, listen.
Wow.
it was in Bloomberg Business Week. My apologies, I said Fortune. Bloomberg Business Week. So it was a well-researched piece.
Yes.
And it just said there are fewer people in the workforce, and this is just a different time for employers, right? Because employees have had, decades of diminishing wages, and I know that personally. We've probably all seen it ourselves. So this is kind of a bit of a reckoning, I think, for a lot of employers who haven't had stellar,
taking care of their people the way they should have, or
bingo.
There's a ton of comments
I
here.
think this is the great awakening, really. But
yeah. Jeff says, sorry, gotta leave. I have a New Jersey, New York port user group, Q2 WebEx meeting. Have to keep my finger on the pulse, both near and far. Have a great day. You too, Jeff. Good luck on that meeting, brother. Gig work. People are making $1,500 a week driving their car for Uber in Cleveland. How can you beat making your own schedule in your own car?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and well, I mean, how much after they pay gas do they actually make? But
exactly.
Still,
that's a great point.
You're chilling. You go when you want. You start when you want. You close when you want. You open the app. You close the app. Right? Like,
again,
it's huge.
I'm giving you guys the secret. I know it's a kid's movie, but Wall-E. If you ever seen the movie Wall-E, this isn't the part of the movie where the one girl gets bumped into the other ones, and then, oh, look at that water. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. And they're starting to notice the world around them instead of the hamster wheel of the grinding of the rat race. Come on.
Absolutely. Kelly says, I have people begging me for light industrial labor. If you need 50 employees to keep your warehouse running, I would have to schedule 125 people to ensure we have enough employees. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it is. The attendance and turnover is insane. I have no idea what happened to the workforce, but they are not there. And you know what, Kelly, you're absolutely right. Stores around us, and I'm sure we talked about this throughout the winter. There's a store called Royal Distributing, and it's just a retail store for like snowmobile, motocross, motorcycle, that kind of stuff, extreme sports and all that. And they were offering $2,000 signing bonus as a retail clerk, like behind a cash register in a storeroom, walking through the store, helping people pick helmets and boots. $2,000 signing bonus.
That's crazy.
Cash. And all you had to do was be there for more than 30 days. And they would give you $2,000. And it's like, you stop and you're like, holy crap, like McDonald's paying you $50 just to show up for an interview. Never mind even taking the job, showing up for an interview, $50.
Yeah.
Like,
so guys, think about this. Think about truck drivers in particular. How many people are failing drug tests, right? Because you've got legalized marijuana use in a lot of parts of the country. Remember that urine tests, it used to disappear, I think, within about a month from the urine sample. And then I think when they went to hair follicle testing, it stays in your hair follicle a lot longer. I've heard 6 months.
That's what I've heard too.
So if you think about that and the impact on just recruiting people, it explains to me why the latest data from the Drug Clearinghouse shows that in April, the number of drivers or prospective employees failing a drug test went up about 11% from March to April. And of course, a lot of these drivers aren't re-entering the rehabilitation program. Like, these are guys that are kind of disappearing. Marijuana was the main drug of choice for truck drivers who failed their screening, almost 4 times higher than that for cocaine and meth and amphetamine. So I think that's part of it.
The old school ones, Dean.
You don't see appetite suppressants in there anymore, which were a big favorite going back in the 70s and 80s when I was a lot skinnier.
Kelly says, I offered $500 $1,000 sign-on bonus, paid $500 after 2 weeks, $500 of the month, and did not help at all. Dean, coming back to that drug screening.
Yep.
So would it not, and again, I'm ignorant to it, so I apologize on this level, but would it not make sense to have drivers do the screening in the states that they're in? So for example, like in Canada, marijuana is legal. Right. So if it's legal and police officers can do it, firefighters can do it, paramedics can do it, obviously not on the job. I mean, I'm sure some do, but they can do it. then if a driver goes home and on his 36-hour reset or whatever, he decides to get high, what the hell does that have to do with him being a professional driver? Because in Ontario, it's legal. He's not doing anything illegal. And I asked this question for a specific reason. I mean, I don't even know if we have the answers. If anyone out there does. My son recently flew out to Calgary for a firefighter opportunity. And part of it was a drug screening and saying, like, if you've done drugs, we're not interested. And I mean, he was okay. He was fine. But it was more of a matter of, I went interesting. So if somebody here just happens to smoke a joint at a party 2 weeks ago, he's eliminated from a job in Calgary, but it's legal here. Right. So it's like, you know, I don't know. There's that part of it where, you know, if the OPP, Ontario Provincial Police Officer down the street gets high on the weekend, as long as he's not high when he's doing his job, what is it of mine? It's not my business. Yeah. It's a real I don't know if that's, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I look at why people self-medicate, right? So, you know, that to me, that's the bigger issue. Like, why do drivers do that? I know from experience why drivers do it. Like, if you are sleep deprived, depressed, got sleep apnea, you're going to smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, you know, smoke a joint. You're going to do whatever you can to self-medicate to get through, because the pain in your brain is extreme when you are sleep deprived and dealing with stress and you're depressed. I think mental health is probably one of the biggest issues we've got going 100%. On in society, but also in the trucking industry. I know that for a fact. I spent a lot of time with drivers who are just really, really struggling. And that's why you see it in TikTok and a lot of the social media posts where people are just desperate. And
well, and you think about it, you're alone with yourself. Right. So I could tell you, I was on the road for a couple of weeks, like nowhere near, and I'll never profess to say, but I'll tell you, all I needed was 4 team trips. Right. And in those 3.5 weeks I was on the road, I was disgusted at how I was treated. And I'll tell you one thing, if I didn't have my buddy Rob with me to have the conversations, I mean, I'd be stewing with the way I was treated for like 9 hours till I get to my delivery or until I go to bed at night. And that causes huge mental anxiety and friction, like huge, because you just stew and stew and stew. And then you just start creating these scenarios, and it's like a snowball as it's going down a huge hill, and it becomes this overwhelming boulder. You know, it's crazy how our brain just takes over.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that's a good way to sign off. I don't know.
I'm thinking that was, we got into a whole, I agree, bunch of different realms. I think you nailed it right on the head. The mental illness. I think we need to focus more on that. Just helping each other, or understanding. Just understand. Like a great song. I forget who sings it, but it's called "Relate." Guys, we're all made the same. Just remember that we're all the same damn person.
Brian Meyer wrote a book called "The ROI of Kindness."
So. Right. I think we should have just give truckers a wave. A wave goes a long way.
Yeah.
Smile. Say hi. Thank them. Something.
Yes. Try and put yourself in somebody else's shoes 10 times a day, and just try. Like I often try and almost everything I do. I trust me, I slip a lot, guys. But in everything I do, I always try and say, okay, you know, when somebody's not getting back to me, when, you know, there's frustration or something's happening and there's friction happening, it's like, okay, put myself in the other person's shoes for a moment. You know, why? Right? Like just do it for a second. And DJ, we often talk about this when we talk about sales, right? Put yourself in the traffic manager's shoes. You know, well, I was in negotiations, I was in talks, everything was going to go, and all of a sudden it's 0 dark 30, the guy's gone. Okay. Put yourself in his position. Did something happen? His or her position. Did something happen? Was there, you know, like, we don't know. And that speculation is sometimes what kills us. Right. You know how many times I've had students say, I'm like, okay, send this email, do this. And oh my gosh, you don't understand. I had my kid got sick or did it. It's like, oh, okay, nothing is wrong. I've done it. I've been in the middle of deals for like 10, 15, 20 salespeople to jump into my program. And all of a sudden the owner goes missing, like MIA for 2 weeks, to the point where I'm like, did I do something? Like a text, no one's, and listen, there's something to be said with just give somebody a heads up. If you're in the middle of a negotiation, give them a heads up. But sometimes people don't think like that.
Right.
So again, that 360-degree view, like, you know, again, for all of us out there in four-wheelers, like, respect the truck on the road. Every single day I'm on the road, I see cars cutting rigs off.
Yeah.
Like, just cutting them off.
So scary.
Because instead of slowing down, they're like, oh, I'm going to speed up to hit the brakes.
Yeah.
And it's like, just slow
Those things
down.
don't stop very fast, guys.
No. But you know what, DJ? It's that thought, well, I could beat the rig.
Of course.
Right? But there's a guy coming up on my arse going way faster, but I could beat the rig. But it's okay. If you're going to beat the rig, give yourself enough room to understand. And like, yeah. Okay. All right.
That's okay. We went sideways. Let's go back. So anyways, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for joining us. Dean, thank you for giving us this hour weekly like you do. Man, thank you everybody for the comments. Kelly, that was great with that information of what you're trying to do and just putting it all together. So, and seeing that even with these bonuses we're talking about, it's not really helping guys. So we just, again, thank you everybody for just joining us weekly, sharing your time with us. Triple D Day, obviously, don't miss it. And tomorrow we have a great guest as well. Tomorrow should be a great show. Again, Friday, don't miss it. Lisa, if you want to join us, let us know. Swag should hopefully be here soon. And again, thank you guys, everybody. Thank you to American Logistics, Centurion Trucking for making this possible. Thank you, Dan, as always. Quote to take us out. I'm actually taking this from LinkedIn. Took everything from LinkedIn today. So Jennifer Welsh, I loved what she shared that I had to share it. So an investment in knowledge pays the best dividend.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Invest, guys.
Centurion Trucking, our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or Centurion